This year, China was added to the OWCS circuit, and the region was given 2 land slots for each international event. For all of the teams competing in China, the goal is to reach one of these international lands, with the first located in Hangzhou. And today, we're going to look at why 2 teams from China did their best to throw a match, just so they'd have a better shot at making it to that LAN event. The 2 teams in question are Rock and Blade. The reason these teams were so inclined to throw has to do with the format of the playoff bracket. The 2 top teams go to LAN, or to put it simply, the 2 teams that make it to the Grand Finals match. You don't need to win the Grand Finals, you just have to get there. Since the playoff bracket is single elimination, this means that only one team from each side of the bracket can make it to the Grand Final. The reason this matters is because one team in the tournament is far stronger than the rest, once again. This team consists of the former roster of the Hangzhou Spark, and, well, they are essentially the only well-established team in China. Team CC and Rock, the second and third best team respectively, don't really stand much of a chance against Once Again, so this creates a bit of a problem. If you end up on Once Again's side of the bracket, your chances of making it to the Grand Finals and to the LAN drop to 0. Team CC and Rock are in the same group, and Team CC reverse swept Rock for the win, placing Team CC at the top of the group and obtaining the first seed. This also put Team CC on the opposite side of Once Again, which is beneficial to them. This left Rock and Blade to fight for the second seed. The problem arises when you realize that the second seed, which is granted to the winner of the match, places them directly into the bracket with Once Again. Whoever wins this match is doomed to lose to Once Again in the semifinals, and their chances at making it to the LAN go out the window. Possibly the most entertaining dynamic of this match is that Blade, on paper, stand absolutely no chance against Rock. If Rock and CC are evenly matched, and CC completely wiped the floor with Blade, then you can assume the power difference between these teams. Deliberately throwing a match is illegal, as it is considered a form of match fixing. But of course, both teams still did their absolute best to lose inconspicuously, resulting in the great Chinese throw-off. The first map is Lijiang Tower, on the submap Night Market. Rock are running a ball composition that is kind of just a mix of different heroes, that Juno Kiriko backline being a bit greedy and vulnerable to dives. This isn't exactly the worst composition I've ever seen, but the amazing part is that Rock essentially never play ball in this map. They almost always play Winston compositions instead, so this is really uncommon for them. They also always put Dia on Cass, but he's on Sojourn here for some reason. There is honestly no sane explanation as to why he's on this hero, especially when you look at Blade's composition. So this is definitely something else. Even disregarding the fact that Blade have never rolled out on this composition prior, it is still extremely questionable, running Sombra Tracer instead of their normal Cass Tracer or Genji Cass. Cass Tracer in particular would be just way more effective here. Blade are also running Juno Brig, a brawly backline, alongside Doom Tracer Sombra, a super aggressive frontline. Playing Kiriko Lucio here would make like infinitely more sense, especially so the backline could follow up. Ana Lucio and Ana Brig would also be okay, but Ana is banned, so that's off the table, I guess. I'm gonna be real, both compositions suck, but they don't suck so bad that it's suspicious. At least that's not the case just yet. At first, things are pretty normal. Chu on Kiriko gets caught out with a Sombra hack and he dies before he can TP, and then Blade are able to cap point off that pick. Things get weird fast though, with Wen taking a bunch of damage head on, and then diving directly onto Dia's Sojourn without any sort of potential follow-up. His Sombra, Pride, had to TP out, and his Tracer, Fari, was busy dueling Pharah. For this Doom Tracer Sombra comp to work, there needs to be at least one player that can follow up, and I have the feeling that this wasn't exactly on accident. Off of that kill, Rock quickly flipped the point, and now it's their turn to make the losing move. Langsa on Lucio pushes really far forward and tries to fight Blade's rotation head on. He is nearly hacked and killed, but Chu's Suzu bails him out. Because Chu was forced to use his Suzu, he was unable to save Dia's Sojourn from Fari's Pulse Bomb, granting Blade an early pick that shouldn't have ever happened. Blade reluctantly take their fight win and capture the point. To start the next fight, Wen on Doomfist pushes directly into Rock's spawn while completely alone. He goes for a quick punch and then uses his Meteor Strike to live. Yes, he forced his own ultimate. Wen drops back down trying to kill Dia's Sojourn, but the follow-up punch doesn't land. He continues his pursuit of Dia and, well, that went as planned, I guess? Now let's talk about Dia on Sojourn, because he has no reason to be on this character. Cassidy is about 1,000 times easier into this aggressive Doom composition, but no. Dia just sticks with the Sojourn for the entire round. He spends this whole round playing hyper passive and basically does nothing. This overclock is also the most useless ult ever, but not as useless as this rally from Noron, which was immediately sent off the map. Oh, and Choi Se-won is not getting off the hook for this barrage either. You are not Top Dragon. Don't go thinking you can trick us like that. Stay in your lane. Rock are back in control, but they've thrown away all of their ults, while Blade have a large bank at their hands. It would sure be a shame if Remedy threw his orbital ray into a wall, completely away from his team. Oh, wait, yeah, he did that. He did in fact do that. That wasn't enough though, since Rock still managed to lose the fight. Blade were back in control, and they needed a hero. When Doomfist took on the role, diving straight for Rock's backline, while Blade's backline was busy fighting and was completely split, unable to heal Wen. Of course, Wen died, and then Pride followed up with a huge TP directly towards Rock, while half health, to get himself killed as well. It was starting to look like Rock have no choice other than to win this fight. Rock aren't about to give up, so they decide to surrender the point for free to Blade, forcing them to cap. Pride immediately jumps off of the point, wanting to keep away from the main fight. He runs at Choi Se-won's Pharah, but the two end up killing each other in a beautiful exchange. Wen uses his Meteor Strike and slams down onto Dia's Sojourn, also punching Chu's Kiri to get a second kill. Wen realized that Blade need a massive play to lose this, so he is immediately drawn to Bellisria's minefield as if it has a gravitational field. The immense, overpowering gravitational mass of Bellisria's minefield also catches Fari's Tracer. Honestly, I don't even have an excuse for this one other than, you know, the spirit of Violet compelled me, or maybe this would make an incredible Tomathan video. Due to these heroics from Wen and Fari, Rock have flipped the point again, but there's a problem for Blade. Those last two throws, they were so obvious that it would be risky to throw any harder. Noron on Brig makes the tough decision to pop the rally and keep the fight going, and then Bellisria leaves the point and nobody touches. Blade recaptures the point and wins the round, all while every single member of Rock was alive. I don't even think we can call this a C9, we might need a new term for this. The second round takes place on Lijiang Gardens. For this round, Rock were likely more inclined to lock in, mainly because going 1-1 would be less suspicious, especially after they stepped off the point with 5 alive to end the previous round. This didn't stop Lengsa's Lucio from using his amp to roll out into Blade's spawn and die though. Rock were able to win the fight without Lengsa, so they got the first cap. Also, the Tracer version of Rock's comp makes so much more sense than the Sojourn version used in the previous round, which is definitely a bit suspicious. Speaking of Tracer, after his team had already lost the fight, Fari walks forward, hits the crouch, and then gets bonked without using his blinks or recall. Fari is really taking one out of the ranked playbook and maximizing that stagger potential. After that, Choi Se-won is found alive in Blade's spawn, and so Pride TPs up to hack him and send him crashing down to his death. Pride realizes that he needs to trade out the kill though, so he sends himself directly to the bridge with a TP so Lengsa can graciously boop him off the edge. Fari also directly blinks in, without recall, ending up dead to choose Kiri. Not a massive surprise, I mean, you know, Blade were putting on quite the performance this time around. Blade continued to stagger, running directly into Rock on repeat. Blade lose both of their supports, Brig and Juno, and then Fari runs in with his Pulse Bomb, missing by a long shot and completely wasting it. Even if it hit, it wouldn't have been worth it. This might be the highlight of the match, a truly beautiful moment in which Pride manages to find a spot on the map that I didn't even know you could fall into. Overwatch literally cannot get worse than this. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Pride. Now, Lengsa gets a chance to show off his wall riding skills after Noron sent him flying off of the map. Lengsa manages to get back up, but Noron sends him back down a few seconds later, and he ends up slipping and falling to his death. This wasn't even a throw, it's just really funny. Blade managed to clean things up and win the fight, getting the first cap after Rock get the point up to 99. To bring it to a third round, Blade just need to lose one more fight. Fari starts out with an extremely early Pulse Bomb that had no chance of killing anyone since Chu had Suzu. Then Fari gets himself killed, granting Rock an early advantage. Wen pushes too far on purpose and forces his own Meteor Strike. He then uses it to slam on top of the roof and get a sneaky kill on Choi Se-won. I suppose with every throw you need to make a play to make it believable. It's maybe a stretch to call this a throw, but I think it was just well disguised. Dia, being the clever player that he is, tried to go for a pulse on Remedy's Juno that would surely miss, but Noron threw himself right in the path, resulting in the pulse hitting on accident? There is no way the intended target was Noron's Lucio. He seriously just threw himself directly into the pulse, maybe unintentionally, but it is still absolutely hilarious. Also, instead of staying on Tracer for a recontest like any sane human would, Fari has gone Soldier 76, maybe one of the absolute worst heroes into a ball comp because of how easy it is to dive him. He can't even get close to the point before Rock send him sprinting back to spawn in a Looney Tunes worthy chase. Absolutely beautiful. With that, Rock take the second round, but it was still a lot closer than it should have been. But if you thought the last 2 rounds were bad, the next one gets so much worse. Before we get to that though, make sure to join my Discord and follow me on Twitch so that you can keep up with my co-streams. These teams are throwing just to make it to Hangzhou, and I'm streaming and analyzing that exact event this weekend. Be sure to catch me for Grand Finals tomorrow, and now back to the game. Rock stick with their ball comp, but Blade, they decide to whip out whatever the hell this is. Bap, Zen, and Soldier are all pretty easy to dive as long as there's follow-up, and the Soldier in particular is just outright worse than any of the other hit scan options. Honestly, there's no reason in even describing how this composition could be optimally played, because Blade definitely do not play it optimally, or even close to it. Chu decides to start the first fight by TPing in directly on a flank and having his Suzu and TP forced immediately. He ends up completely split from the rest of Rock, and then hacked and killed by Pride Sombra. Pride needs to trade himself out now since he doesn't want to win the fight, so instead of just shooting Choi Se-won, he hacks, giving Choi enough time to turn around and obliterate him. Of course, Choi also dies right after this. Both teams are completely avoiding the point. Wen's Hog is just circling around the point, completely avoiding capturing it. He decides to go on an adventure to chase Lengsa's Juno instead of touching point. And once Wen gets the kill, he still doesn't capture the point. You can see how much effort he's putting in not to contest. Even when Bellisria finally dies, Wen still doesn't help cap, and Blade reluctantly place Remedy on the point to cap. Only one player, so it caps slower. After realizing they're winning, Fari decides to make yet another true hero play, running directly into Rock's spawn. This is where it's just undeniable, like you cannot make this up. Who does this? Due to this essential tactical feed from Fari, Rock are now back in control, and they aren't happy about it. Fari has no fear though. He doesn't care if the admins come after him anymore. He's just in it for the bit. He charges back in when Rock already won the fight, and runs into a mine, with Lengsa finishing him off for a stagger. If you thought that was all Fari had up his sleeve, you were dead wrong, because this guy is back at it. He runs up to the high ground, completely avoids the point, and goes for a diabolical flank. He somehow survives this, and since that wasn't enough to kill him, he charges right back in, chasing Dia's Tracer instead of capping point. He actually gets the kill. Fari knows he needs to lose this fight, so he avoids point, does this loop-de-loop to put 3 shots into Bellisria's ball, and then beelines it for Rock's spawn, taking a point-blank duel against a Kiriko with all of her CDs. Even Violet couldn't manage this. While all this happens, Blade stalled for as long as possible by chasing Bellisria to the end of the earth, instead of just, capping the point. Even when Wen gets the hook to finish the ball off, he just starts running at the backline and he completely ignores the point. Only after Rock completely back out do Blade finally cap the point because, they kind of have to. Of course, Fari just keeps one-upping himself, this time with a solo visor on a Tracer? Now, this is just outright criminal at this point, and he gets a kill on Chu, like he was trying not to get a kill, and he got one anyways. Fari wraps around on his newfound flank and just kills everyone, I guess. First Lengsa's Lucio, and then Choi Se-won. Blade retake the point, and now Blade need to throw just a little bit harder to close things out. Fari may have giveth, but now Fari shall taketh away. Fari charges past his own team, his Hog and his Zen watching in horror as he beelines it at the Kiriko, who, as always, has all of her goddamn cooldowns. Fari falls and Rock watch in horror as they witness just how willing their opponents are to lose this match. Our hero Fari flies in once more, honing in on the enemy Kiriko like a precision missile strike. Fari is met with a Kitsune and a Suzu, and Bellisria's ball is forced to put him out of his misery. Or maybe Bliss, I'm not really sure at this point. And Pride, in Pride fashion, takes down Choi Se-won before TPing directly at Dia's Sojourn and then doing a little shimmy before getting his head blown off. Blade managed to lose both of their DPS before using either of their support ultimates, so this allowed Blade to slowly stagger out with their ults. They had done it. Blade had thrown the round so unbelievably hard that they managed to lose the map.
节奏已经完全导向了 RC， 那这张地图应该是可以用 RC 拿下。
是的，最快能返场的好像是一个巴蒂斯特呢，这肯定是来不及的。我们恭喜 RC 拿下第一张塔的胜利，现在大比分1比0领先。
只是我没有想到在空中中期两边队伍会拿这样的两套阵容。
This series was absolutely incredible, and the next map choice from Blade was Havana, and they banned Kiriko. As a fun fact, Blade had 4 map picks outside of this match. Against Team CC, they chose Saravasa and Esperanza, and against Little Sheep, they chose Blizzard World and Route 66. I have the feeling that Havana isn't actually a preferred map for Blade because of this. I'm not going to go into detail for Havana, but let's just say it had plenty of throw moments as well. One of my personal favorites is Fari straight up going AFK in Spawn. Rock managed to lose this map by feeding as hard as they could, and by Rock I just mean Bellisria. I've never seen a Winston player try this hard to die before. Seriously, Bellisria just boxes himself in this room, and this has to be on purpose. And Bellisria, he doesn't stop. He runs right in there to stagger himself to make sure that Rock won't get a touch for first point. He was feeding that ult charge at record pace. The chaos continues, and Bellisria goes on a flank with Lengsa, who is on Zenyatta. Yes, the Zenyatta Winston flank. And only after Lengsa dies, Bellisria uses his primal, instantly loses all of his HP, and gets a total of 0 value. I mean, I guess he lived on 2 HP? Blade managed to cap the 3rd point in overtime, and then Rock just had to do as poorly as they could on their attack, and that went as far as Bellisria swapping over to Doomfist in the late minutes of Rock's 2nd point attack to ensure that they would lose. An impressive performance, but also, at this point, these two teams were obviously throwing, and the admins were likely catching on if they hadn't already. After Havana, my personal theory is that Rock got in trouble with the admins, and they had a conversation. Sure, Blade were throwing too, but the problem for Rock is that they are by far the better team, and they should realistically be blowing Blade out of the water, so the admins, yeah, they had a little talk with Rock, most likely. I think the starting compositions on Esperanza, the 3rd map, tell this story as well. Rock are running an actual, real, viable composition that is often played on Esperanza, while Blade are on, well, whatever this is, with Fari on his signature soldier. Esperanza doesn't look like either of the previous 2 maps. Rock look like a completely different team, and they start absolutely rolling Blade. Sure, Blade take a fight here and there, but they don't even reach the first checkpoint. Also, Noron has a nice little Ajax here at the end, a beautiful sight indeed. As if things weren't already chaotic, an extended, probably 20 to 30 minute tech pause is called when Rock's internet goes out. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage from that pause, but I was co-streaming it live, and all I remember is that it lasted a really long time. Also, if you are wondering what would happen if one of these teams forfeits the match, they also forfeit the entire tournament, so that isn't a workaround in this case. The OWCS admins were going to do whatever it took to finish this match, especially because they knew exactly what was going down. Apparently, even the OWCS China casters knew what was going on and were exclaiming that both teams were avoiding capping point on Li Jiang, which is absolutely hilarious. The final map was Suravasa, and Rock knew that they were on thin ice after the creature ate their Ethernet cables and delayed the match by 30 minutes. They run the good old HaydenRHN Bastion composition, and at this point, I would like to believe that Rock were just hoping Blade would be able to beat them since it isn't optimal, but Blade were just too good at tossing. After a quick 3-point Suravasa, Blade did it. They lost the match and moved up to the easier bracket, while Rock ended up stuck in the impossible bracket with the absolute monster of a team once again. And you know what? This is honestly the best possible ending. I'll say it straight up, Rock are a shitty org. They are a Saudi org that just dropped into the China region with a bunch of money and bought the second best roster, and then signed 2 strong Korean imports to try and get a cheap land slot. Ignoring the fact that there is a non-zero chance that at least some of the money came from questionable sources, Rock also have Legendary signed as a content creator, the same guy who was banned from Overwatch Contenders and removed from the Overwatch World Cup due to the usage of derogatory language towards a Blizzard official. To say that in a less nice way, he was outwardly transphobic towards a trans caster while co-streaming a World Cup match. Lengsa, the main support player for the team, has also faced allegations of sexual misconduct. Those allegations resulted in him being dropped from once again in favor of Mew. I can't say much to the accuracy of those claims, but they were serious enough to warrant action. And if all of that is not enough, after Rock inevitably lost their match against once again, they posted AI Ghibli slop art of the team instead of paying a real, living, breathing artist. This image is so obviously AI and it's awful. I mean, just look at this hand, like what's going on here? In the end, this wasn't too bad of an outcome. Sure, the bracket and tournament format were absolutely unfair, but at least it was Rock who were screwed over. Although Blade ended up with the easy bracket, they weren't able to do much with it because they wouldn't get past Team CC anyways. This meant that Team CC easily moved on to the grand finals, securing their slot in the Hangzhou LAN. Also, screw AI art. All of my creatures and my bois are drawn by a real human, and he is the best. His name is Lake, by the way. And in the comments, please write a thank you note for Fari since he is the MVP in the fight against shitty orgs and AI art. I'll see you next time.